Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
All right, Cody and Nick, we actually have games to talk about. Finally, we can actually get into some things that we're seeing on the ice here. And we're just going to jump right into it now. Kind of a word of caution here on this week's episode. We're recording this on Wednesday night, the 29th, actually right before Game 3 of the preseason between the Blue Jackets and the Blues. So we're going to mostly react to what we've seen in the first two games so far. So we're going to hit everything for you. We're going to hit forwards, we're going to hit defensemen, we're going to hit goaltenders, and then we have some interesting Ask Us Anything questions that came in to be able to wrap it up this week. So, guys, let's just jump right into this. Cody, I'll just start with you. You've watched the games so far, a couple of them. What has stood out to you the most right off the bat here?
Well, in game one, it was definitely Chinikov. The question was, how would he look against other NHL talent? And I think he very quickly showed that. He scored a goal very early on against Pittsburgh. My major takeaway from the first two games, though, definitely the penalty kill. I think they're 7 for 7 at this point, and that's a part of the team that really struggled last season at times.
Oh, very definitely. Yeah, I think it was 5 for 5 in the Pittsburgh game, then a couple more in the Buffalo game before things kind of fell apart at the end. But yeah, if they can figure that out, keep that power kill going, that certainly bodes well for them. So, Nick, what have you seen in the early going? Anything really stood out to you in your view?
Definitely, I got to say, I got to agree with Cody there. The PK is looking strong, but at the same time, you know, you don't really want to use the PK 7 times through 2 games. I know there's a lot of guys who are trying to impress right now and really throw the body a bit more, but hopefully we can hopefully we can see the Blue Jackets get that under check a little bit so they can, stay a little bit more disciplined as we move into the season here. Other than that, I would say what has really stood out to me really is, those X factors. I got to say, there's a lot of X factors. Through the first 2 games, we saw a couple of different ones fire. Particularly looking at the first game, it looked like goaltending was a real strength. I think that they were really outplayed through the first half of the first game, and JF kept them, rock solid. We'll get into all this a little bit more in depth later on, but yep. I'd say that those X factors and just getting one to fire every game could be enough to get them, kind of winning.
And we're going to go into the goalie situation here. We'll attack them first here in a moment. There's 2 things I'm going to share real quick. Like one thought from game 1 that stood out to me, and one thought from game 2 that stood out to me. So the thought from game 1 is Adam Boqvist. So let's have that conversation for a minute, because he did 2 things very, very well in that game that stood out. So the first one is the obvious. He scored the 2-0 goal, made a beautiful pinch right there. Didn't get all of the shot, but still was effective enough. So it looks like that we have more or less a second Zach Werenski, someone who's very offensively minded, isn't afraid to drive the net. It's a great puck mover. And that kind of leads into the Boqvist effect. And I wrote about this the other day that, I don't know if you saw the power plays though, but holy cow, the puck movement with him at the quarterback position, it was just crisp. It was, I wasn't sure for a minute what I was actually watching out there, because watching the Blue Jackets for the last several years and seeing mundane, kind of boring power plays, this was different. And that has to do with the quarterback that was back there. And I think that he low-key is going to be a big part of an improvement in that unit. I believe he's ultimately going to be on the second unit once the season begins, as Werenski will most likely be on the first unit. But now, in reading some different things out there, I know The Athletic is one of them. They mentioned that comparable to him is, of all people, Erik Karlsson. And let that sink in for a second, that they're comparing Adam Boqvist to a potential Erik Karlsson. How good was Erik Karlsson for several years, especially on the offensive end? If Boqvist can meet that somehow, then they're going to win the Seth Jones trade. Even though they gave away a really good player, to be able to get somebody like Boqvist back if he meets that upside, at least for one game. It looked really, really good, him running the power play. Now, game 2, kind of moving forward, I know a lot of people are going to focus on the collapse. Fine. The preseason, it happens. A lot of younger players out there. Crowley missed an empty net at the end. That could have made it 5-2. You can talk about that all you want, but the good stuff is this finally the year Oliver Bjorkstrand finally. We always say that the breakout is coming, and he has decent years. But is this finally the year where he's going to hit that 30 goal plateau? Scored a couple goals in game 2. Looked very good, very confident doing it. Depends, what line mates they put with him, and see where it goes. I think this finally could be the year. Now he's been in the system for a long time. He's very comfortable with it. He's going to have a full season ahead of him here. I think the elements are there that he's finally going to be able to get to that 30 goal plateau. And that could make things interesting, especially when you have Voracek, you have Line, you have Nyquist, you have some good wingers there. See where that all goes.
Yeah, that was another one of those guys who really, he showed that he wanted to be in Ohio, signing that big deal last year. And it will be definitely interesting. They've freed up some space on the right side, getting rid of Atkinson a little bit, because they were kind of a similar type of player, more of a goal scorer than an assist machine. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Bjorky does heading into this season. He's got a new opportunity in front of him. Yep. This is a squad looking for a new identity up front, and he is definitely poised to be a breakout star for sure.
And Cody, I know you were impressed with Bjorkstrand's performance.
Yeah, I was right away really intrigued by the Engel, Roslovic, Bjorkstrand line, and they really got going quickly. I mean, Engel gave a great feed to Bjorkstrand, and he buried it, and then scored very quickly again. And he had an opportunity on the power play for a hat trick in the first period. He had a really good one-time shot, and goalie got across and just made the save. It was close.
I mean, he's expected to do well in a situation like that, being an inexperienced vet, and it's encouraging to see that he certainly took advantage of the situation. So hopefully big things coming for Bjorkstrand as we get going here. So let's transition here into the goaltender situation. And Nick, I know you kind of alluded to it earlier when you were talking about Berube and the way that he performed in game 1. And it's actually a question that I posed in one of my my game 1 takeaway piece. Like, all the attention right now is on Elvis Merzlikins. He's got the new contract. Jonas Korpisalo is kind of the lame duck. He's got this year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. Everyone's focused there. But what about in Cleveland, right? So Daniil Tarasov is actually going to be playing in game 3. I'm going to be starting the game. They're going to be expected to be the number 1 goalie in Cleveland to start. Jet Greaves was thought to be number 2, signed to an AHL only deal. Did well in Traverse City. A little bit of a rough night against Buffalo, especially at the end. But JF Berube, though. Nick, is this a situation in your mind that even though he's there on a PTO, could he have a say? Could he have a spot in this organization, in your opinion?
I mean, he's playing well enough for one. I mean, like I said before, there's no way Columbus wins that first preseason game without the play of JF.
Yep.
No way. They were sloppy in front of him. so many shots getting through. Through the first period, they were outshot 13-3. Somehow, through the grace of God, Yegor Chinikov managed to slip one past the Pens goalie. I don't see how you can really say no. I mean, he ticks a lot of boxes. He brings some experience. If you're looking to move on from one of your goalies in the middle of the season, this is a guy who can come in and, serviceably play backup. I'm not sure. I don't really see any reason why he wouldn't be able to find a spot. I mean, other than the logjam in Cleveland, but the way that Jet kind of played in game 2 definitely brought a lot of questions in terms of from what I was reading online, there was a lot of questions in the fan base about Jet. A lot of calls for him to, get dropped or whatever. So, maybe that's a guy that you call up should there be an injury. But yeah, I definitely think JF is playing his way into a spot in the organization. Cody, what do you think?
Well, I really agree. It doesn't matter that it's a PTO, because in the past, the Blue Jackets have clearly shown if you perform, they will bring you onto the team from a PTO. We saw it with Michael Delzato last season. He performed well and played well enough to make the team, and he was actually a big difference at times for the Blue Jackets, and I expect a somewhat similar situation here if he keeps playing the way he has been.
Let's not forget that Berube is a former Cleveland Monster. He's been in this organization before, and he's moved on to a couple different places, including most recently AHL Ontario. And it's kind of funny that if you watch him closely, he's actually still wearing his Ontario Reign mask in these games. And I find it interesting, too, that not only did he play in Pittsburgh, he played really well. He's also playing in the game against the Blues. He's actually going to be the backup to Tarasov, so it's a good chance that we might see him in the game later. But you think of the first 3 games. Greaves has played twice. Berube has played twice. That's not a coincidence. I really think that it's something that we're not given enough attention to, because that position in Cleveland could turn out to be very important. Nick alluded to it earlier about if one of the goalies gets moved, say Korpisalo gets traded, you need to have somebody who has the experience, who can come up in a pinch and is serviceable. And he's right. Berube checks all those boxes. And, Greaves, and, he lost a season in the AHL. Some question what his true upside is, but he's still, Cleveland's rolled with 3 goalies before. I mean, they've had, when Kivlenix was there, Brad Thiessen was there, Tarasov came in. So there's a situation where there could be room for all of them. And I think that, it's interesting that Berube's getting the start here, because I really think that if he continues to perform the way he does, heck, he had 20 shots and a shutout in just over 30 minutes. That's a pretty good way to make an impression. So that's something that we should be keeping track of moving forward here. Let's transition, Cody. We'll start back with you on the defenseman here. And I think we've seen a couple of debuts. And we already mentioned Boqvist's debut, but in game 2, we got to see Jake Bean for the first time. So just kind of overall from a defenseman standpoint, if you want to talk about Boqvist, Bean, or anybody else, what have been your impressions on the D so far? And has anybody else stood out to you at all?
I feel like the defense looks slightly better than last season, and they do seem a little more offensive minded. Like you touched on the power play with Boqvist. Mm-hmm. I thought it looked very similar with Jake Bean playing QB back there. I felt like the puck moved quicker, and there was more puck movement than you normally see on the Blue Jackets power play. But the one defenseman I don't think it's not being talked about enough, Vladislav Gavrikov.
Yeah.
He had a great goal last night, and we don't talk much about his defense because he just does his job, and he does it well. And I just feel like he does not get recognized enough.
Nick, what do you say?
I want to go back to Boqvist, because You talked about a lot about his upside. And I got to say, you can definitely still tell that he is a young defenseman.
Yep.
Because he was so quick to join the rush. He looked so excited to join the rush, but he is coming as advertised as a little bit weaker defensively. And that's not a bad thing right now. I mean, he's very, very young in terms of a defenseman. Most defensemen aren't even in the league at this age, let alone, being on pace for 35, 37 points like he was last season in a full season. Boqvist, I don't know if it's his posture. He looks so small out there. He's a smaller guy for a defenseman, but he just looks a little lackadaisical in the defensive zone, especially when he's playing away from the puck. That's what I really noticed, is that as soon as he gets the puck, he makes the smart play, makes a good pass, or he makes a good rush up the ice or something. But when he's away from the puck, that's definitely an area where I'm sure he's definitely probably targeted as something, to grow on. But I got to agree with you, Mark, that power play looked slick. It was like quick, lots of shooters. I mean, with Chinikov too, they were blasting it. There was a great play with, I believe it was Hoffman and Chinikov. And it was just a pass, quick shot Hoffman, quick shot Chinikov, boom, boom. That's what this power play needs to succeed, is, quick movements and hard shots. And if that's what they can bring from the point with Boqvist, that's what they're going to need moving forward for it to be successful. What do you think of the goalies?
What I think of the goalies?
Oh, sorry, our defensemen.
I was going to say the defenseman.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, everything that you said so far about Boqvist is right on, for sure. Came as advertised, I think, is a very good way to look at it, because you can see the obvious upside offensively. You can see some of the deficiencies defensively, and you know that that's going to be a point of emphasis. And you said it well. He's young, and he's got plenty of room to grow into that kind of two-way role that the team would be looking for. But it'll be exciting to see what all he is able to do, especially on the man advantage, because that's where he's going to get a lot of his points at, for sure. We'll touch on this later when we do Ask Us Anything, but there's a couple of defensemen that, we think 1 through 4 is pretty set for the most part, right? I mean, I think most of us can agree in some form or fashion, Werenski, Boqvist, Bean, and Gavrikov's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, however they want to kind of maneuver that. But do we really know what 5 and 6 is yet? And I think that's what some of these games here are going to kind of tell. Who's really going to separate here? Who's going to get that chance? Like, for example, watching the game against the Blues here, Gabriel Carlson, Dean Kukin are both playing. They would love to have a spot on the blue line. Scott Harrington's been in. He'd love to have a spot. He's been the 7th defenseman for a long time. So that's something that needs to sort itself out. Who's going to fill out that bottom pair? And I think these games are going to kind of tell the story on this one. Who's going to make the roster in this case. And actually, a quick scoring update. It's going to be a little unusual that we're recording during a game here, but we have a Boone Jenner goal, and it's 1-0 Blue Jackets.
Oh, baby.
Backhander. Yeah. Little backhand goal is actually kind of a nice offensive play by him. So, but yeah, if you're listening to this, you already knew that. Just we're recording during the game. And a quick note on that for you fans, we are actually making this an exception. We normally will not actually have an episode on Wednesday night if the Blue Jackets have a game, but this week we are doing that here. So next week they have a game against Detroit at Nationwide Arena on Wednesday. So we're not going to actually have an episode. We'll actually be back in 2 weeks for you. So keep that on your notepad. So next week we won't be here. We'll be back the following week. So now let's jump into the forwards. And Cody, I'll start with you on the forwards. A lot of ways we can go with this. There's been some obvious players that have stepped up here. Like, what has stood out to you, good or bad, just in the early going for you?
Well, obviously, really good is Oliver Bjorkstrand. Looks like he's in midseason form already.
Yep.
That is because they are going to need him to score goals in bunches if they want to be competitive at all. Chinikov, again, has proven that he belongs in the NHL, possibly already. Still can't get over that shot.
That's wild.
Tyler Angle has looked good. I believe he had 2 assists last night. You also have, so the forwards that's looking like a very deep area for the Blue Jackets this season, especially if you can get Line A going. Hopefully that empty net goal by Bemstrom gets him going. It's hard to tell exactly because it's only been 2 preseason games. I'll be a little more confident on what stands out after I get to watch a few more games. But so far, those are the players that have really stood out to me.
Well, what does Nick say?
Nick says that they look quick. Definitely, they look fast. They look hungry to be on the puck, which is good. Great. We love it. Some guys that really stand out to me, someone that we haven't really mentioned yet is Liam Foodie. In that first preseason game, he was really killer. Like the first shot of the game, I think, was way too late into the game to get your first shot if you're any team. He did a little stop and then kind of broke towards the middle and got a shot. That's a confident move. Definitely. Generally, if you're a little panicked, you're just trying to get anything on net as quick as possible. You're not thinking that next step ahead. He is definitely in a big season for him because, it's been a while since he had that strong playoff showing. Last season, I spent a lot of time in Cleveland. He's got to show that he wants to be in the big league. And, as a first round pick, there's a bit of pressure on him to do that. I think he made a big step in that first game, at least. He looked quick, confident on the puck. He looked good there. Somebody else who I really liked, and we also haven't touched on yet, is Josh Dunn. He's definitely not going to be on your top line, bottom 6 guy, but he's a big boy. He's 6'4", and he's strong on the puck. Not comparing him skill-wise at all, but looking at the way that he skates and protects the puck kind of reminded me of Yager a bit. He's not a fast guy, but he's got a lot of muscle in his legs, and he's not easy to knock off the puck. So that's definitely a guy who, as you're looking for center depth, he got some games last year in Columbus, performed pretty well in Cleveland after signing out of college. That's a guy who can be one of those depth guys who can bring your team from good to great. And finally, got to say, oh, sorry, Mark, did you want to say something?
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. So, and finally, Chinikov, that shot, I'll be quick. That shot that he had, as soon as he got the puck and he kind of wound up a little bit, as much as you can wind up into a wrist shot. I was like, oh, this is going to be a goal. And it was marvelous to see, got to say. Mark?
Yeah, I think that whoever passed the puck knew that it was going to him, knew it was going to be a goal too. So we could talk forever about the shot. It's just absolutely incredible. So forwards wise, I think it's pretty obvious who stood out so far. You guys have done a great job in kind of clarifying that. I think there's a couple things that I've been kind of monitoring here, just, kind of seeing what happens. The first one are some of the invites that are there. Why are we talking about invites? Because some of those guys may have lost a season. Like a guy that comes to mind for me in that position, I actually was trying to watch closely in the Buffalo game, was Peter Reynolds, somebody who plays in the queue, St. John, the center. Didn't get drafted, even though that many thought that he could be drafted. I don't think it's an accident that the Blue Jackets have them and are trying to evaluate him, because he was inserted into that lineup against Buffalo as one of the centers, rather than somebody like Kevin Stenlund, who's trying to maybe battle for a roster spot potentially as a center. So that was interesting for me, because I do think that there's something to, do we have a little bit of a hidden gem here? And I wonder, maybe not just in Columbus, but around the league too, how many teams are utilizing those undrafteds to be able to try to find that diamond in the rough. So whether Reynolds actually gets anywhere or not remains to be seen. I know they're going to make some cuts after the St. Louis game, and you may already know what those are by the time you're listening to this, but I'm just curious to know if, maybe they'll get into the AHL somewhere. Maybe they'll sign, maybe it'll be an entry-level contract in a couple of cases. Somebody really impresses, but I'll just be really curious to see, because they could have put anybody at center, but they put him there. Why would they put a guy that is in on as a free agent invite there? Because I think they're looking to see if there's something there. So that's one thing that kind of crossed my mind. And then just seeing, there's going to be some different line combinations this year. Who's going to gel? And obviously Bjorkstrand, Angle, Roslovic was talked about earlier by Cody and Nick. And the Angle especially looked really good. And it just kind of makes you wonder, could he have an outside shot at making this roster? I just don't think there's the room, but he could certainly put himself in the conversation. If he doesn't get in with Columbus, he's certainly going to have a very prominent role in Cleveland and a potential top 3 to 6 role who could be a call-up candidate. So, he keeps just impressing at every opportunity that he gets. So watch out for him. And then, just kind of thinking overall too about the center depth. Another guy I want to call out is Alex Texier. And I just wonder, he's gone into a game here. Is he a center? Is he more of a winger, or is he a center? I personally not going to use 1 or 2 games to judge that yet, but it's certainly a question that I do have. What's the center depth going to look like? And if Max Domi gets back ahead of schedule, as reportedly being mentioned here, what's the center depth going to look like when Domi is back? Is there even room for Texier at center? So if he gets into some of these games here, I think it'll be very good to watch how he handles it. If they put him on the wing, if they put him at centers, I think the Blue Jackets want him as a center. It's just, can he meet the standard and get to that point of being a center? We'll see about that. Guys, what do you say about Texier?
Well, I mean, he's got skill. He's got potential, and he's got time to build on those things. I think he looked pretty good in that first game. At one point, when he first came over to North America, people were talking about him as a guy who could be that number 1 center. It didn't stay for very long because of his, long-term performance in his first full season. But this is a guy who has been placed in a center role before. He played pretty well in it across the pond. I'm pretty sure he played center across the pond. He came over known as a center. Mm-hmm. It takes some guys some time to figure out how to play at the NHL level before they can actually shift over to a center slot. So we'll see. He could definitely, I think he could definitely fill that slot. Cody, what do you think?
There is no doubting his offensive ability and his ability to perform in big moments. He opened the scoring against the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 during the sweep in Game 4 on the power play. So we know he is able to handle big moments and he has skill. The biggest question with me about him at center, his face-off ability. His face-off percentage is not where you would want it to be for a top-line center. So that is the point of his game that he needs to improve if he does want to try to be a center for the Blue Jackets at this point, I think.
Yep. Well said, guys. So let's transition here to our final segment of the show. And this week we had some Ask Us Anything questions from some of our Twitter followers. So we very much appreciate you guys chiming in here. And there are actually 3 questions that came in that we're going to kind of go over right now. So give us a second here. We're gonna pull up our handy dandy Twitter. And so we'll just start out. Nick, we'll start with you. What is the biggest surprise, in your opinion, to make the roster as a surprise, and then conversely to miss the roster as someone we pretty much would have expected to make it?
Well, this is definitely a unique year. We've talked about it time and time again in terms of, there's so much depth at every position, and the argument is out on whether or not it's strong depth, but there's definitely a log jam at each slot. So there are definitely going to be guys at each position who are and aren't going to make it. I look at the defense and I think there's going to be a good defenseman who is not going to stick with the roster. That's just the way it's going to be because there's such a log jam back there. I'm looking at a guy like, Scott Harrington's been around for a while. Andrew Peak, he's looking pretty good. I really like that pairing in the first preseason game. I'm not 100% sure who it's going to be, and I'm not like on the missing it side. I'm not 100% sure who it's going to be because it's going to be some tough calls, and it's going to come down to the rest of these preseason games. So I'm gonna take the coward's way out and say I'm not sure who's not going to make it yet. But I think that if you look at where we were at the start of the summer, we were questioning who's going to make it up front. Is Gregory Hoffman? Is he good enough to make this squad? So that could be a guy up front who could miss out, even though he's been much touted coming into the season. Making the team, my money is on Foodie. I don't know if we expected him to be here just yet, but I think that he could be a guy who would step in and make the roster full time. I don't know if is that a hot take or not, because he's a first round pick. Probably not. But
based on last year, I think a lot of people wondered, how quickly could he get it together. So maybe call it warm.
It's a lukewarm take. A lukewarm take.
Cody, what kind of takes do you got for this?
Well, I personally, based on how much experience was traded off this past season and before the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised by anyone really making the roster. I feel like that's where they are as a team. If I had to pick a surprise to make the roster, I think I would agree with Nicholas on Foodie, because I didn't anticipate him being much of a difference this season. But after watching him so far, I think he could be. And I think that could be the biggest surprise.
And I'll give 2 names because I always like to stick my neck out when someone asks for the opportunity here. So here we go. Nick mentioned the defenseman earlier. I'm going to make an argument that I wonder if Andrew Peak's the odd man out. Now, let me explain why on this, because I'm one of those people, when I'm watching the team, I pay attention to who they put in the games early in the preseason. It just so happened that Peak played on back-to-back nights in game 1 and in game 2. I don't think that's a coincidence. That could be indicative of a couple things, in my opinion. That could be one, they want to get him some experience, especially playing on that right side, because there's certainly a role that's sitting there for a right-handed shot defenseman like Peak. So they want to see where he's at. but also how secure is he? I mean, some of the veterans are only playing their first game against St. Louis. He's certainly not in that boat. He's already played twice. He's got a point to prove. And if he doesn't do well enough, I could totally see a scenario. I'm not saying that he's the odd man out right now, but I could see a scenario where he could be, and I'll be curious to see how many more games he gets between now and the end of the preseason, because he's someone mentioned. Scott Harrington's out there, Gabriel Carlson's out there, Dean Kukon is out there. Now Gavin Bayruth would like a spot. Heck, he even had a quote saying, they probably think I'm already down in Cleveland, and I want to prove a point that, I can actually be here. So they have other options. If Peak doesn't make the standard, they will not shy away from, not putting him on the roster. And conversely, about the guy that I think, be maybe a name that isn't getting the attention that it deserves, Justin Danforth, somebody that I think could surprise some people. Just played his first game the other day, looked pretty decent doing it. When you have bottom six spots that are open, there's certainly room for somebody like him to be able to come in and possibly make this roster.
That's a great pick, Mark. That's a great pick. Danforth looked great. I honestly, I completely, as soon as you said him, I was like, yeah, he's awesome. He was quick, he's scrappy, and he could definitely make an impact in the bottom six.
He most definitely could, and we'll see where that one goes for sure. So I got two more Ask Us Anything. So that first question, just want to give credit from Alex, which is at @a_nuddle_cbj. Thank you for the question. Cody, we'll start with you on question number 2, and it's from @HockeyHound Show. Pretty popular Twitter guy out there, likes to share the news a lot. He chimed in with a question. In your opinion, who is the next captain? Cody?
Boone Jenner. Easily.
Easily. Any particular reason that sticks out to you?
Experience. I feel like he's the most experienced Blue Jacket at this point, I believe. So am I correct in saying that?
Certainly experienced, yeah.
I feel like he plays a very similar style to Nick Foligno and kind of has the same qualities you would expect from a captain. And I think you could argue Zach Werenski, because he signed the big contract and he's that star player that finally they were able to get through and sign. So, I mean, I think you can make the argument for him, but at this point, I think it should easily be Boone Jenner.
Well, Nick, I have to ask you now, is it easily Boone Jenner in your opinion?
Yes, it's Boone. It's got to be, because, I mean, a guy like that, he's been called by management, like the quintessential Blue Jacket. Like so many people have called this guy, he is the personification of the Columbus Blue Jackets, blue collar guy. As a lot of hockey people like to say, he just goes about his business. He plays hard. He is a leader. He had a lot of leadership experience in Oshawa as in the OHL.
Yep.
I don't see it not being him, because even Zach Werenski talks about Boone Jenner like he's a leadership figure, like a strong leadership figure. It's got to be Boone. Mark, are you going to disagree with us? Are you going to disagree with two of us?
I am not going to disagree, but I'm going to give a what if. All right, if that sort of makes sense. So I do ultimately think it's Boone. I think you both made great points about the leadership, goes without saying. When he left at the end of last season, did you see the energy level from the team? Like, just kind of shoot way down. And he is a spark plug. He means everything. So yes. Now, would I say easily? Here's the what if, and it has to do with Werenski. Who's the face of the Columbus Blue Jackets right now? Honest question. Can you honestly say it's Boone, beyond shadow of a doubt? Werenski is the number one defenseman. He just signed a new contract for 6 years. He just went to the media tour in Chicago representing the Blue Jackets. I'm just saying, because I'm thinking back to the quote that Kekalainen and crew said about when the time is right, we'll know when the time is right to be able to name a captain. I just wonder whose team is it ultimately? And if they give it to Boone right away, that's sort of what I expect. And, that's a great choice if that happens. But I just wonder, are we setting ourselves up here for Werenski? Because he's the one that made the big commitment, signed the huge mega deal. It's his blue line now. He is the number one defenseman. That's the only what if that I wonder. Guys, what do you think?
Of course, you would have such a good what if, Mark.
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just what if.
Like I said, I think there is an argument for Werenski considering the circumstances with him signing the max deal. And he is a bigger face of the franchise at this point, I do think. I don't feel like that's enough with Boone's experience. But I think there is definitely an argument.
It's that star power. Nick, do you agree?
Could you ever say that Nick Foligno was the face of the Columbus Blue Jackets?
I would say he was a face, but
yeah.
to say the face, I would have personally said Seth Jones, but that's me.
There's just a lot. Like, this team isn't a team that has been about flash.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Werenski almost just made the best defenseman in Blue Jackets history right there. No, Zach Werenski, he's the Corvette. He's in the garage.
Yep.
He's flashy. He's quick. He'll bring you, he'll bring you the girls. But this team has never been about flash. So I think that to choose Zach Werenski over Boone Jenner for the captaincy would kind of go against what the Columbus Blue Jackets have been about in the last 20-something years of their history.
Right. One last question for you guys, Nick. I'll start with you. And I love this question. And it's from Brandon Dauntz at B Dauntz. Hope I said that right. Thank you for this question. I think it's an excellent question. He said, what is or isn't different about Cole Sillinger that should make us confident that he won't flame out if he does make the team? And he says, how is he different than the others that have been pushed into the lineup early? And the examples that he gave are, Alexander Picard, Gilbert Brule, Alexander Wenberg, et cetera, and didn't find success. So he's wondering, what makes Cole Sillinger different than them, Nick?
I'm going to say, I don't know. I could definitely see this being a guy who, if he makes the roster this year, I could see that being a situation where he is pushed into the NHL too soon. The first preseason game, not gonna lie, I wasn't a huge fan of what I saw from Cole. He was good with the puck. Moving it on the power play, he was good. But I got to say, when he just had the puck, sometimes he was easy to move off of it. Whether that's just because he's 18 years old or not. That I think he could probably use some seasoning, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him, manage to stick on that. They're really pushing this top line of Laine, Voracek, and Sillinger. I don't see anything that particularly jumps out at me as him being different or, nothing makes me super optimistic that he would be, better than those names that were mentioned. Cody, what do you think?
Nothing really jumps out at me either. I could say he is explosive on offense, but a lot of people thought Wenberg was as well. He came in 2016, had all kinds of assists and goals, and he just never really turned into that prolific scorer. I do think he could use some time before he is in Columbus. He is young. He's going to be very good. I don't think he's going to be a bust by any means. I just don't think he's ready.
And I'll say this to wrap up the show this week. I actually do think he's different. I'll lay out the reason why I do, because, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but if we're talking about the pedigree thing, a family member, in this case, his dad, it's a reason that they called him a suitcase player because of how many different teams Mike Sillinger played for in his career. But that pedigree, and when you grow up in that means something when you have a dad or a family member like that, to be raised under him, to be able to learn under him, all the experiences that he has, that I think he can handle the ups and downs maybe better than some of these guys. I know Picard and Brule each had talent in their own right, but yeah, they absolutely flamed out. I just don't think they have the same, kind of upbringing, whatever you want to call it. And then just see what Sillinger has already been able to do. I know it's a very small sample size here. So there's always a chance that, yeah, he could absolutely flame out. And I actually think that he should take a year either in the AHL or back in the WHL. But just what he's been able to show so far, it's clear the team likes him. I mean, they obviously put him between Voracek and Line A, in the game against St. Louis and in practices. They want to see what he has. And if Sillinger does make this team, it'd be the first 18-year-old under Kekalainen to ever make the Blue Jackets. They believe in not rushing their players. So they're going to take their time. They're going to look at them in a bunch of different situations. They know the talent is there. And when you look at what a lot of the experts say about him, a lot of them say the same thing. The only concern that they have, for the most part, is his skating, and that doesn't mean he's slow, just some technical things. But he's got everything else. He's tenacious. He plays two ways, not afraid to be physical. He can shoot the puck. He can just impact the game in so many ways. And when you have that pedigree like that, you put the whole package together. That's what should give you the confidence that he is different than some of these other guys. And I would actually be surprised if he made this roster. Said he'd be the first 18-year-old under Kekalainen to do it. He certainly has the pedigree to do it. But if this is going to be a tough year for the Blue Jackets, let him develop. Let him go to a situation where he enjoys success. Let him come in next year and be ready to dominate. I think that 1 year of development is going to be huge for him.
I think one more point you can make is out of those other names mentioned, did any of them at any point in their career score 46 points in 31 games? He's explosive. I mean, I know you can't compare that to the NHL level, but that's just the thought. He is explosive, and he does have that ability to be explosive more so than some of those other names, I do feel like.
Nick, do you have a final thought?
I'm not going to backtrack. I believe the question was that if he sticks around this year. I do agree that there is something about him, in terms of future seasons. Yep. I think that he is the kind of forward prospect, centerman prospect that hasn't been seen in the organization for a while. Wenberg could have been that guy, but I think he got a little shell-shocked early in his career due to the physicality. So that can hit anybody at any time. But got to say, yeah, if he is on the roster this year, I'm not sure that he would be any different than the rest of those guys. No.
There's always that chance. Cody, Nick, as always, great show. Fans, thank you so much for joining us for Union Junction episode 5. Again, a reminder, we are not going to be here next week because the Blue Jackets have a game against the Detroit Red Wings. So we'll be back the week after that. And, maybe we'll have a guest, maybe we'll have some more analysis for you. But as always, thank you for tuning in. Have a great couple weeks. We'll see you back here next time here on Union Junction.